Hello, good morning, everyone. Hey, so glad you're jumping on here and watching. I've got a very special guest I'm excited to introduce you to in just a minute. So I am Meg Glasgow. I have Plein Air Frames here in Eagle, Idaho. And I am also kind of the creative force behind the Eagle Plein Air Festival that is coming to southern Idaho here the first week of June. And this show is really created for painters, plein air painters that want to kind of up their game, get ready for the festival. So anyway, glad you're here today. Jump on, ask questions, give me the thumbs up. Let me know you're watching. I appreciate that so much. And I now want to introduce our very special guest, Ken Spencer. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning. Fun to be with you.
Oh, great. So many of you know Ken. He's a renowned oil painter that has a wonderful reputation, of won awards all over from coast to coast. And he's got a little different take on plein air versus painting in the studio. And so I've asked him on today to kind of share your thoughts, Ken. And anyway, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Tell us your origin story. How did you get started in this glamorous art business?
Well, I've been drawing and painting since I was a kid. I started when I was 14. I had actually a injury that laid me up for a while, and what I did to entertain myself was draw a lot of pen and ink. Then, just as I got into it, just found a rich world of expression and something that resonated with me even from a pretty young age. I think all kids love to draw and paint, and I just it stuck with me.
Nice.
So I ended up going to school to Utah State. They had an amazing illustration program. Glenn Edwards was the main professor there for illustration, and that the strength of that program was that we drew and painted from a model almost every day, from freshman to graduate students. A lot of time with a model, and I think that was the real strength of that program. So after graduating from college, I went to New York, the New York area. I actually lived in New Jersey, but commuted into Manhattan, where I did.
And that sounds really glamorous, right? You leave Idaho, you're home in Utah, and go to the big city.
It was an adventure. Yeah.
So you did illustration work then for publications, magazines?
Yeah, I did a lot of book covers. Because I grew up, I was from the West, they seemed to think that Westerns was just a natural fit for me, which I didn't grow up on a farm or anything, but I did a lot of Western book covers.
Oh, okay. All right. Neat. So then you came back to Idaho. Then you're currently live in Blackfoot, right?
Right. Yeah. My wife is from Blackfoot. I grew up in Ogden, Utah. But after our East Coast adventure, we decided to move back to Blackfoot, where her family is.
Nice. Well, great. And you are a full-time artist, right? And you have been for several years.
Yeah. Since college, I haven't had a traditional job. I've been an artist since graduating from college.
Oh, that's quite an accomplishment. Yeah, good for you. Shines on your reputation.
Well, I think tenacity is a big part of gaining success in this market, in this career. You just got to stick around. You got to be around long enough to grow personally, and then find your place. It
does, and that way it does. I like hearing you say that, Ken, because it does take a lot of courage and tenacity and a commitment. Now, you are very disciplined, because we've been talking the last several days here this week, and you take your painting time in the studio really seriously.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the direction I think we're going today, is how to use plein air and maybe my perspectives on the studio. And so maybe as somewhat of a lead into that, I would just say that And for me, plein air is educational. It's like exercise to maintain and develop your powers of observation and your draftsmanship. But studio for me is where it really comes to bear. That's where I believe my greatest work happens is in the studio, and plein air is supportive of that.
Okay, that's really interesting to me. So let's dive a little deeper in that. Okay, so describe your process. If you're starting outside and then move into the studio, just tell us a little bit more about how you work.
Yeah, so a lot of my studio pieces are conglomerations of ideas or places or experiences or things that I've painted. So I would say both plein air painting as well as photography, and I have a camera with me all the time, and I'm taking photo reference too. So when I get into the studio, I'm using the experience of plein air painting as well as the studies done on location, as well as the reference photography. And I work conceptually to a degree too. The way I compose, design an image, that's far more a decision-making process than a copying process. So I wouldn't say that I take a plein air piece and then just make it bigger in the studio. The plein air piece and other references are, what's the word? They're inspirational to I guess they're just resource material for something bigger. You know, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, yeah, I'm just kind of fascinated by this. So when you're out in the field, right, you take a sketchbook and your camera, and are you doing studies, painting studies out there as well?
Yeah, I'm far more likely to paint than to sketch, than to draw. Painting, oil paint has become such a natural extension of the way I work and solve problems. I'm a big believer in value. So a lot of times I'll sketch, well, pretty much all the time. I sketch in the composition, the arrangement of masses and shapes, and then establish values before color's dealt with at all.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So how, in a term of percentage, I'm trying to understand. So when you're out in the field, would you say you get the painting 50% done and then finish it in the studio?
No, I'd say they're almost always 100% done in the field.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
then use that for reference, and you come back in the studio and you kind of change the composition or make it larger?
More changing the composition. Again, the reference, the plein air piece is done on that location, studying that lighting situation, that particular composition. And then in the studio, I have use of all these things to say, well, I like the sky that I got here. I like the colors of this one. And so we'll put them together, and really, then in the studio, there's time to nuance the piece and make it really what I feel is fine art. It's not just copying what's there, but decision making that I don't know, just goes beyond. It goes beyond just a picture, but it's a piece of art.
And those decisions have to come from years of experience, right? Of having
for sure
successful paintings and ones that you're not quite happy with, and learning from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so that gorgeous green landscape I see over your shoulder. So yes. Oh my gosh, that's stunning. So is that one that you started in the field?
Definitely not. No, that's
that size
I'll
canvas.
give you a little bit of scale here.
Oh my! Oh, yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that's like 4 by 4 feet. And there are
Wow.
painters like Joaquin Sorolla that painted really big on location, but that's not me.
Okay. Gosh,
Most of the time, I'm painting 8 by 8s, 12 by 12s, 11 by 14s in the field. That's
sure.
about
Okay. Well,
as I go.
so then when you're, one of the challenges when plein air is the light, right? And the changing conditions and whatnot. So how do you still capture that same kind of magic when you're back in the studio? Is it largely from memory or from your original sketch? Or how do you capture that, the emotion in the landscape?
Yeah, good question. I don't find it difficult to capture it in the studio. I think that there's a challenge capturing it on location because of the fleeting nature of your resource material. You know, I think maybe the more applicable question is how do you capture it on site? Because in the studio you've got time to mix and I think what happens on the palette, the mixing surface, is really important to getting magic to happen on the canvas. So on location, when you're painting outdoors, there's some really quick decision making that you've got to make and stick to, for better or for worse. And I'm sure anybody out there who's painted more than once has had the experience of getting out there and blocking in a scene, and then the light changes, and it's different.
Big cloud comes.
So I think it all comes down to making decisions right away and capturing those. So I guess I'm really wanting to address the in the field aspect of your question. So that those decisions have to be made and kept, for better or worse. I mean, it's just a painting, and you can wipe it off. But making a decision of what, say, cloud formations you're going to use, or the percentage of sky versus land, all of those decisions have to be made right up front, and you kind of got to stick with them through the process and not chase things. You got to make a decision and stick with it through the end. And I think that's when you get it.
That's good stuff. I want to go back to your palette a little bit, because I know the painters are going to want to know what colors you're using,
Sure.
what you take with you on location, if any tools and tricks you want to share.
Well, I'll start with palette, and you remind me of the other things you said as we go. So let me address the palette first. So I use usually 3 yellows. 2 of them brilliant, like a cool and a warm, brilliant yellow, such as Cad Lemon. That's a light, cool, brilliant yellow. Cad Yellow Medium for a brilliant, warmer yellow, and then an earth yellow, like yellow ochre or raw sienna.
Okay.
One of those, and those are pretty interchangeable, I think. I also sometimes put on Indian yellow, which is a funky yellow. It's an interesting yellow. Most yellows die when you add white to it, but Indian yellow turns more brilliant. Then reds, I usually have a warm and a cool red, or something like Rembrandt's I use a lot of Rembrandt paints. This is Rembrandt Permanent Red Medium. That's just kind of a standard red. And then a rose red that's a cooler red. And there's lots of versions for that, but like a quinacridone red. Most of the time I just have ultramarine blue and a lot of times Viridian green. Viridian green is very useful in color mixture. And then, so that's kind of the bright side of the palette, the saturated side. And I like to put on also either raw or burnt umber. I find that a pretty useful color to have on the palette. And then titanium white.
Okay. So what do you what's your favorite piece of equipment that you've ever bought?
An umbrella.
Oh, okay.
I do not like to get baked in the sun, so I of course the umbrella it's nice that shelters the painting, but I'm more worried about me out there. That I need to be able to be comfortable as I paint, and especially if I go on a painting trip to say a plein air event such as yours. You know, you're there for days, and you got to take care of yourself while you're out painting. I think that's really important. Lots of water.
I was just going to say hydrate and sun protection.
Yeah, sunscreen. As far as like easels and things go, I currently use a prolific painter palette from Josh Bean. Don't know if you're familiar with those. So the thing I like about this is there's a lot of mixing space.
Right, that's nice.
And this just attaches to a standard tripod with these.
Right. It looks clean, Ken.
It is clean, yeah. I clean my palette when I'm done.
All right.
I don't like to have old paint on my palette.
Hey, before you sit down, I screwed up. Allie Zaire is on watching us, and she says we can't see the whole painting in the back. That big 4-footer that you showed us earlier. Can you show us that again? There you go. There you go, Allie. That's for you.
There you go, Allie.
All right, and Allie is also asking, when you're painting outdoors, are you concentrating on getting the value or the color correct?
Yeah, good question. I think of the two, value is more important, but color gives, of course, richness, and people react to color more viscerally. But as a painter, I think value is a greater priority because contrast is a big part of what draws your eye to one place or another. I think value is a more powerful attractor to your center of interest than color is. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's interesting. And speaking of value, we're looking at that figure over your other shoulder. Tell us about that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's great.
So this is kind of an example of my thought process in working. This did not exist in nature. So this was a concept. Let's see if we can get a little bit closer to the.
Wow, that's really nice.
Kind of getting a lot of glare from the screen, but so this is in totally invented color, and it was based on a choice of green and red, So it's kind of representative of my thought process, that I'll come up with a concept and then find the reference material, or go photograph it, or get a person to pose for me, and develop it in the studio. This is a piece that I'm currently working on. Oh, that painting has been accepted into the Oil Painters of America National Show. So that's in Midwest somewhere.
Good for you.
Here's a piece I'm currently working on.
Well, that's pretty too.
And this is another situation where the color is more decision making than actual recording what was there. More interpretive.
Is that a scene near you?
Yes, it is. It's not far from my home. Here I'm near Blackfoot.
Nice. Beautiful. So it's so fun to get a little sneak peek at your studio. It looks like I'm trying to peek behind your shoulder. There's some great, good looking stuff in there. That's kind of nice to get a window into your world. So tell us, how many paintings, since you paint all the time, but how many paintings do you like to complete in a week or a month?
Yeah, good question. Recommendation I would send out there to artists listening. Over the course of years, have tried different things, and I am a production-minded person. I think it's helpful to produce, even if I later destroy a painting. And I do that. I still do it. I get out the skill saw and cut things up that I don't like anymore. That's true.
So you celebrate the destruction. It's not only.
It's liberating.
All right.
It's liberating. But to answer your question, over the years I've done different things, such as set myself a goal of producing 100 paintings in a year.
Oh.
And so, breaking that down to a couple paintings a week, and that's not just plein air painting. That's studio work combined with plein air pieces. So I think it's a good idea to set yourself some goals and just pound away at it. Do a lot of starts, and don't be afraid to paint over them or destroy them. As if you're a working professional, or even if you want to become, there's a point where you got to get work out there, and you can't say, well, I got to paint 20 more and then I'll do it. So at some point you got to get them out there. Yeah. But I think it's very healthy creatively to produce, destroy what doesn't come up to scratch, keep what does, and then do it over and over again.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated to hear you say that you really don't fall in love with each one. Like sometimes you have to destroy that baby and of your painting and say, hey, this doesn't meet my standard, and set it aside and move on. Yeah. So.
No, I think there's don't get attached to anything. Don't get attached to colors. Don't get attached to processes. Don't get attached to anything. That's limiting.
Yes.
If
it probably stifles creativity too, right?
Right. Yeah. Even somebody that's a fantastic, wonderful painter, I don't believe they got that way or continue to be happy if they're just doing the same things over and over again. That's flipping hamburgers, and you don't become an artist to flip hamburgers, to do the same thing over and over again.
That's right.
Try new stuff and don't get too attached to anything.
I like it. So let me ask you this. So you've had great success as a painter, so congratulations. And So what advice do you have for artists out there that are waiting to be discovered, so to speak, or waiting to make it big? What advice do you have for them?
Well, I don't know. It doesn't feel like I'm that successful. I think success is a unicorn. It's, it's fictitious. What exactly does success mean? We can get philosophical here, but I think success is growth. And if you're growing, you're successful. It's dangerous to link your success with with being able to sell paintings, although that feels really good and I love it every time it happens. But it's I don't know if that answers any question. I'd be interested in hearing the comments from people if they have specific questions about that. But be careful about waiting to be discovered. Just work, show up, work, do the best you can. Surround yourself with amazing ideas and amazing work, whether that's actual owning pieces or, everybody can find it on Pinterest and have that kind of inspiration, and that's good. I do it myself. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of tons of great work out there.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Good stuff. All right, so we've got a couple more questions coming in, so I'll pop these up. Okay, so Allie's back again asking about your lighting in the studio.
It's fluorescent. I installed this lighting 20 years ago, about 18 years ago, and I just have full spectrum fluorescent lighting. Full spectrum, if anybody's not familiar with that, it's a fixture that generates the full spectrum of wavelengths, and that is super important. Otherwise, you don't see colors accurately. I also have 2 6-foot north light windows in my studio. So that's what I've got.
Nice. All right, we've got another question here from Emily. She's asking, do you mix your shades or do you prefer the colors straight out of the tube?
I'm a big lover of tertiary colors. I do a lot of mixing. And I think that's one real helpful thing for plein air painters is when you're out there, mix a lot of paint, mix up 2-3 times what you expect to use of a given color. The reason behind that is you're going to cross-pollinate colors. You're going to pull a little bit of this mixture into that mixture. So I do a lot of mixing and mix a lot of color. Mix a lot of pigment.
So would you describe yourself, Ken, as a kind of a stick to the rules kind of painter when it comes to color and your approach, your technique, or do you kind of like to go against the grain sometimes?
So my approach is I do tend to stick to rules in terms of the color theory, that the way that colors become beautiful and create contrast and so forth. There's rules behind all that. It's not just touchy-feely. There's rules behind why color works the way it does. But then there's the magic element, the genius element, where and I'm not saying I'm a genius, I'm using that term in the sense of going beyond one's natural ability, where some experimentation, and it opens you up to failure, to that did not work. But
like you said earlier, that's where you grow.
Yeah, but sometimes putting that out there, there's an intuitive part of, well, that area just needs more punch, and you pop that in there and it works. And that's not really rule following. That's intuitive.
Right.
But so I think 80 to 90% of it is rule following, and 10% of it is risk taking. And that to get the painting sort of saying.
Great stuff. Well, is there any, as we're kind of taking this back home here, is there anything that you really wish people knew about your work? Anything else you want to share?
I don't know. I think if anybody's interested, go to my my website and see the work.
Which I have right there.
That's jkenspencer.com.
There you go. And you have an event coming up. Tell us about that.
Well, unfortunately, it conflicts with yours.
It does this year, but next year we're going to sync up. We'll get together.
Yeah, I'm teaching a workshop in Midway, Utah, May 31st to June 2nd. If anybody out there is interested in that, there's information on my website about it. Okay,
website is jkspencer.com. And it's a great website.
jkenspencer.com.
jkenspencer.com. I don't know what I said there. Okay, well, it's got it on the screen anyway. That's super. Well, great. Well, we are sad you're going to miss our Eagle Plein Air Festival this year. We would love to have you join us. So maybe we can put you down for 2019. It would be so great to have you. We're going to have a good time, and I will just flash that up on the screen too. So if you want more information about the Eagle Plein Air, we're at eaglepleinair.com, where we have classes and a lot of great information on our website as well. So Ken, this has been extraordinary. Thank you so much for spending time and sharing your insights. And particularly, I love getting a little sneak peek at your studio. It's fun to see paintings in development there. So I've enjoyed this tremendously. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Meg. It was fun to be on your show.
All right. I love it. Great. Well, you get back to painting then, and have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, I'll do it.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching.